everybody, welcome back. This week we're going to be going over our cake decorating makeaway kit. This is a 50-piece kit that comes with all kinds of tips, piping bags, acrylic scrapers, a decorating guide, as well as some other useful tools to get you started with basic cake decorating. So we're going to go over everything in the kit, and then I'll show you a cake to decorate. So this is the kit. It comes with 32 different little nozzles or tips for you to use for all kinds of different types of icing effects. So French tip, some star tips, all kinds of kind of unique and different tips to go with, as well as some connectors for your piping bags, a flower pick for you to ice flowers on, as well as a cleaning brush to help you clean out all of these little tips. They can be tricky without it. So that's what's in this plastic case. Then we have a decorating guide for all 32 of the tips that shows you what each tip is capable of making and the different kind of designs they're used for. So a little diagram of each of those. The decorating guide also shows you how to add the couplers and screw them onto the silicone bags. Speaking of which, here are the silicone bags. There are 2 of them. They are very easy to wash, easy to put the icing into. Super great because they're reusable and good for the environment. This is a flower scissors. They're used when you make flower decorations on this flower pick. You can pick them up off of that and transfer them onto your cake. I'm not going to show you how to do that today, but there are tutorials on YouTube. These are a set of texturizing or not texturizing, flattening spatulas you can use to create different kinds of textures on the side of your cake very easily. And I'm going to show you how those work in just a second. So this is a cake that I picked up and had pre-ordered so that I wouldn't have to bake the cake part of it, but I could just show you all the fun stuff. So these allow you to add some texture. I'm going to go over it again to make it so that kind of ribbon texture you see on a lot of cakes can be used or made using these spatulas. This is used for like a flattening. So once you put on that first layer of icing, called a crumb layer, you can go back in whenever you put in your next layer of icing and make it all smooth and flat. So that's what I'm demonstrating here. I'm going to go ahead and flatten out all of the little beaded icing that was put on this cake, and I'm just going to show you that really quick. So just scraping off all of that excess icing so I can make it a completely flat cake so I can decorate the top and the sides. So just scraping off some of that excess icing, and then I'm going to go back in and smooth out the top as well. Alright, so completely flattened and out the cake. Now I'm going to show you how to put icing into these silicone piping bags. So there are a bunch of different types of tips. I'm going to use this star-shaped tip. It is number 26. Each of the tips have a number corresponding on it, so whenever you look in the decorating guide, you can see what each of them does. So I'm using number 26. Opening up the coupler, dropping it down inside, well, flipping the bag down so I can see inside, and then dropping that coupler down in there, kind of squeezing it towards the end. You don't want to squeeze it too tight or it can break the bag. Just want to get it down there so that you can get the tip over it, and then screw on the coupler. Just give it a couple of good twists to make sure it is on there. So that's the bag with the coupler inside and the tip on. this is a trick. You can drop your little piping bag down into a tall cup. I only had a small mason jar, but flip it inside out. That way it's easier for you to get the icing loaded in there. So I'm just squeezing it down until I have a nice big opening to drop my icing into. So I have some blue. This is just store brand icing. Comes in the little container, and I just added some blue food coloring. So just scraping off my knife in there, turning it right side out, and it's easier to just squeeze your icing down in there. Rolling my little bag up. So here I have some parchment paper that I've drawn some lines on Sharpie. I'm just going to show you how to do a couple of basic piping techniques. So I flip the paper over so that I can see the Sharpie line, and I'm just squeezing and pulling away at the bottom to make that kind of scalloped shape. So putting pressure on at the beginning and then kind of lessening off, holding it kind of at a 30-degree angle to make these little scallop shapes. Then some little dots you can use to make kind of like a little border. And I will say the icing at this point is getting warm, which is why it's kind of drippy and really giving me trouble here to make these little dots. You're supposed to keep the icing above room temperature, so you want to keep it chilled until you're ready to use it. But that's just a tip and a trick. And so here I just make some more scallops with this blue icing. And then next I'm going to do these scallops in a circle, which is basically how you're normally going to be doing them on a cake. So just squeezing and then letting off. Squeezing and letting off, kind of dragging the tip along. Alright, squeezing and letting off. So that is what I will be doing on the edge of the cake. Just making that kind of little scallop shape. Alright, and here I have some green icing I've already put in a bag just like I did with the blue before. This is just a round, I think it's called a French tip, just used to make like little beads on the top of a cake. This is also the tip you'll use if you're writing on top of a cake, making any kind of easy lines. Make some squiggles here. So I'm going to write out the word hello, capital letters. So this is the kind of tip you're going to want to use to do writing. A smaller tip will give you obviously thinner letters. I've written out hello in cursive here. So that's kind of what the tip you're going to want to use to do letters. Just trying again with the little beads, but this icing has been sitting out even longer, so it is getting very melty. So it's giving me a little bit of trouble, but yeah, this is just to show off what kind of stuff that tip does as well. So for my next, I'm just going to do almost like a rope or like a braided rope effect with this tip. This is a design that I looked up in a cake decorating book before all this started. This is normally more done kind of with royal icing, but could be done with, you know, any kind of buttercream or anything. So whenever you lift it up, they're kind of connected, almost like a laurel. And then I'm going to go in and put in a little dot in between each little bump, just to give it a little more pizzazz. And this butcher paper with the icing is a great way to practice using the icing before you use the cake. And the best part is whenever you're done practicing, you can scrape all that icing and put it back in your little piping bag. So that's a good tip that I've learned as well. So I'm going to change out this tip for another star-shaped tip, which is what I'm going to use to do the border on the actual cake. But I want to show off a couple of practice things with it as well. So this is a bigger star shape. This is kind of the shape that you use when you're putting a lot of icing on a big cupcake or making big kind of flower looking shapes as well. So just practicing some little stars. You see the tip is kind of, the icing is squishing out and leaving a big glob on the end just because it's warm. So if you're icing anything and you see that it's kind of becoming drippy, you just want to pop it in the refrigerator for a couple of minutes to try and get it to be more solid. So just doing a little bit more of that scallop shape. Just practicing just a little bit more before I move over to the actual cake. Then I'm going to show, the scallops that I'm going to do. And then I'm going to show you, like a big flower type shape. So you might see something like that on top of a cupcake. All right, and now that we've practiced all of the shapes and kind of piping that we want to do, I'm just going to do a couple more little dots to see how I like those. Don't really like how they came out, so I just stick with the scallop. And we're going to move on to our actual cake. So here's our cake. I'm going to start off with that scallop shape. As I said before, you see it is starting to kind of get melty. So in a couple of places you'll see where it kind of, where it kind of skips off to the side or pulls some of that white icing up off the top of the cake. And that's just because both the cake and the icing have been sitting out for a while, but that's fine, you know. My mistakes are your advice to not do on your cake, so I am scraping off the tip on the side to get a cleaner tip, so I'm just scraping off on a little bit of piece of parchment paper on the side. So that's where my hands keep disappearing off to. But yeah, so in the end, not too shabby. That little mistake I made, I'm going to cover it up with some little blue dots that I'm about to do next. So, just adding another border with the blue dots. And now I'm going to get my green. I'm changing the tip out, and I'm going to changing the tip out. I'm going to attempt to make a little border on the bottom. This was not so much scalloped because my icing was getting too warm at this point, so it's just some little bumps along the bottom. So there's the little decoration add at the bottom and the top. Now I'm going to write out the word Spark Space, which is the name of our makerspace at the headquarters library. Then I'm just going to add some little decorative dots up at the top. Try and use up all of our icing, and some at the bottom. So here's our finished product all the way around. So overall, this was a lot of fun to work on. The cake decorating make-away kit has all kinds of tips you can use and all kinds of tools. So I think it's a great way to learn a fun hobby on the side of just being able to decorate any cakes that you may make in your house. But thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.